Do you put all your chips into trying to get the most out of that, or do you take a chance on something else? Now, speaking of taking a chance, and this is my bonus question that I want to hit on really, really quick because it's something that was floated out there, and I know Jackson has strong feelings on it. A certain Paul George has been linked in some hypothetical Cavs trades. Now, let's get this part out of the way first. It would have to be a sign-and trade. That makes things much more complicated for everyone involved, but all things being possible, Jackson, what do you make of the PG-13 speculation?
It's stupid. Like, I know that people don't like Brandon Ingram, but Brandon Ingram is better than I think people think he is. And I also think that while Paul George is better than Brandon Ingram in 2024, you can't make a trade that sends away like Garland and Allen and get a 34-year-old unless that 34-year-old is going to significantly raise his team ceiling to the point where they're going to be a championship level team. And I don't think
I think he would.
Okay,
we disagree slightly on this.
But this is
I don't think it's possible. I don't think the trade will happen. And I wouldn't sign a petition for it. But if it happened, I would talk myself into it pretty easily because I think
you can talk.
He's probably one of the best 3-and-D.
You could talk yourself into Kyle Kuzma.
No, I couldn't.
Yes, you could.
I'm not a big fan of Kuzma or Ingram on the trade market.
I think so. Like the problem is, you're gonna have to, if you were to get Paul George, you're gonna have to operate tighter into that like 3-star model where all 3 of your stars have to really fit, and you're gonna have to pull in like guys that really fit around them. So if you were to do that, you're looking at like, Isaac Okoro needs to take a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Like you have Max Strus, you have, like it's really tough to make that type of system work in today's NBA unless you have megastars. And Paul George is not a megastar in 2024. Donovan Mitchell isn't. And I don't know if their games fit well enough together where you could actually talk yourself into it. Like this isn't, like people forget how good Kevin Love was and how good Kyrie Irving and LeBron, well, people don't forget how good Kyrie and LeBron were, but like they were immensely talented players. And I don't know if, like, it's just really tough to get this model to work. And it's a lot easier to be the Phoenix Suns than it is to be, who I think Devin Booker is better than anybody who would be on the Cavs. Like, it's easier.
You could argue Donovan.
But, like, okay, so if you were to power rank George, KD, Donovan, and Booker,
well, their problem was the Beal trade, in my opinion. First off, I think they gave up a little too much for Durant, and then they said, "Screw it, we're gonna take it to the next level and go for Beal for some reason." Mobley, Mitchell, Paul George trio, I think is pretty dang good. There's obviously setbacks, health concerns, the age. Like, listen, you would be taking a big swing and a huge risk. But if you're going to trade Garland and Allen for anybody, I could talk myself into PG being the guy. But I probably wouldn't make that decision.
You don't have your draft pick until 2030. What is Paul George going to look like in 2030? Well, probably not.
I couldn't tell you.
I mean, you
maybe
probably don't want to know.
Is just signed to JJ Redick's network.
Yeah, well, JJ Redick, who knows?
Listen, I think in theory, like if you're trying to maximize the championship window, I could talk myself into it. I want to be so clear. I'm not signing up for it, not advocating for it. I'm just saying I would be able to talk myself into it. I know that you are very much against it. And I understand why.
Like if it was like, hey, you're trading them for LeBron James, who is still a top 10 to top 5 level player.
Issues. You're really punching on everything.
LeBron James is
1 year, basically.
LeBron James is better than Paul George. You could talk me into LeBron James being better than Paul George in 2030.
Right now? Okay.
Yeah, like right now.
LeBron
right now. Yeah, but like LeBron is like...
He's going to be pushing 50, man.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying, if
Bryce is going to be in the league.
if they both wanted to play in 2030, I would put a lot of money on LeBron James being better than Paul George. And like that's like a ridiculous thing to say.
This one, so.
Well,
so
check this out. If they're both playing in 2030, we would definitely be able to prove this one.
I guess so, yeah.
I don't think we care. But it's just like if you were to get somebody like LeBron, who I think would make this a championship level team, I think then it's like, hey, let's do that because this team currently has a long runway, but I don't know if they have a championship runway. If you get Paul George, I don't think this team has a championship runway, and it definitely doesn't have a long runway anymore. So that's where I think all of your issues are going to be coming from. And it's just like, yeah, you could talk yourself into it, and I think you would have a fun next 2 seasons, but I don't know what that looks like afterwards.
I think it'd be pretty ironic if the Cavs were like, we've had some pretty injury-riddled seasons the past 2 years. Why don't we just go for one of the players who is injured more often than not, and Paul George, who he might not be out for like long stretches, but the guy takes like weeks off due to like random sprains or anything. And then you put all your chips in, and then you have a skeleton crew of a roster because you moved everything in. And then it becomes, wow, Mobley and Mitchell for 60 plus games, but then you get a few guest appearances by Paul George. Cross your fingers for postseason time, and then that contract runs out, and then you're like, wow, and now we're stuck with a terrible contract.
Tony, if we're talking about,
I will say he has been healthy in the playoffs recently, though. I will say he misses a lot of games, but he has played in the playoffs recently. The health is a concern, though. I'm not denying
that. Brandon Ingram health is much more of a concern, honestly. He's playing like 50 games a year.
I'm not even going to advocate for any trades. I'm really not sold on any of it. But I think Paul George does give you a championship window. It's all I'm arguing. If they made that deal, I would say, hey, they got 2-3 years where you have maximized your chance. But again, I'm okay with keeping this together.
I have another dumb hypothetical. Would you do that trade for KD?
Yeah. Same thought process. Would you rather do maximizing your 2-3 years? It's basically the Toronto thing with it a little bit more of a leeway because you don't have to worry about Kawhi / Paul George leaving immediately after. You know that you have him. You just have to hope that he's healthy and you manage to make a run at it, which Toronto got really lucky in a lot of ways, but that's kind of the blueprint that I'm using.
I think kind of the difference between that blueprint or like what you're envisioning is that the pieces around the core guys, like in Toronto, really made sense, and I don't think they make sense the same way in Cleveland.
Well, it would also depend on how you manage. If you manage to restructure the roster around, now you're asking a lot to retool the rest of the roster. Like, what if you got Norman Powell in return of that deal as well? Would that help? The little things around the margins that you could do. Again, it's not going to happen. This was the main thing that I wanted to say is Paul George. Right. I'm saying it right now. There's no sense in even doing the 10-minute hypothetical we just had because he is not coming to Cleveland. I don't think it's going to happen. That's the main reason why I think we should stop talking about it.
Who has a better chance, personally? LeBron or Paul George?
LeBron.
Okay.
Which I think is all the same issues, but even a smaller championship window. But I'm not going to complain about.
But the championship window is like wider. It's like a door. It's like a runway. You have to go through all these fraudulent teams in the East,
In Jackson's mind, it's the security guard meme where they don't even pat down; they just let you.
Basically, that's like LeBron hasn't lost a meaningful game in Boston since like 2008.
Well, that's all for this.
He did lose that. He did lose that one game where he was crying afterwards, which was pretty great.
Yeah.
So I do want to bring that up.